Hey Hammers fans, before we get started, make sure to drop a like, leave your comment, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any West Ham news. West Ham's latest transfer narrative has taken a sharp turn after new information emerged from David Ornstein regarding Joshua Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo. The essential point here is simple. West Ham have already contacted Manchester United to explore the possibility of signing both players, and the situation now feels less distant than it initially seemed. This comes at a moment when the fan base is visibly restless, particularly after seeing Zirkzee start a match this season and fail to seize his opportunity. The pressure was clear, with Benjamin Sesko out injured and supporters from both clubs watching closely to see how he would perform. His display, however, did little to inspire confidence. For someone being discussed as a possible replacement for Nicholas Füllkrug at West Ham, a quiet performance only deepens concerns. This frustration is amplified when the opposing goalkeeper has a standout night. Jordan Pickford produced several remarkable saves, including a late one with astonishing reach that spared Manchester United from another round of jokes at his expense and extended Zirkzee's long goal drought in the Premier League. Those numbers weigh heavily on any conversation surrounding his future. West Ham supporters who have little patience for misfiring strikers due to the club's complicated history with the position had already made their preference clear. In a poll about who should replace Füllkrug should the German depart in January, Ivan Toney won overwhelmingly with 70% of the vote. And after United's defeat to a 10-man Everton side, it is easy to imagine that the minority who backed Zirkzee may now be reconsidering their choice. It is in this atmosphere that a new chapter surfaced through David Ornstein. Although Fabrizio Romano had already confirmed that West Ham called United to ask about Zirkzee and Mainoo, Ornstein's update suggests that things are not as closed off as they once appeared. According to him, there has been no progress in the contract talks between Manchester United and Mainoo, whose deal expires in 2027 with an option for an additional year. When a young player in ascension faces uncertainty like this, it inevitably sparks interest. Regarding Zirkzee, Ornstein went further than earlier reports and clarified that the supposed competition was not as strong as indicated. Rumors had been circulating about Roma's interest, perhaps signaling a return to Italy, where the forward previously played for Bologna and Parma. But Ornstein suggested that this scenario is far from certain. If Roma are not genuinely in the race, West Ham may emerge as the more realistic destination among the interested clubs. All of this unfolds with the transfer window rapidly approaching, only 5 weeks away. And while Ivan Toney pursues his dream of reaching the 2026 World Cup, Zirkzee is also aware that a January move could reignite his hopes. His frustration at Manchester United has become evident, something Ruben Amorim acknowledged even before the defeat to Everton. The manager understands the restlessness players feel when a World Cup approaches, yet he made it clear that the club's priorities must come first. In the end, the key takeaway from this opening chapter is clear. West Ham have made their move. The situation is unresolved. Zirkzee missed a valuable opportunity, and Mainoo's contract remains at a standstill. Nothing is guaranteed yet, but the landscape is far more intriguing than it was just a few weeks ago. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. When you look closely at everything happening around West Ham right now, it becomes clear that the movement involving Zirkzee and Mainoo is not accidental. It stems from a buildup of tension, frustrations, and expectations that have accumulated over recent months. There is an emotional weight surrounding the center-forward position at the club, a weight that has already worn down big names and tested the supporters' patience. This burden does not come solely from recent struggles. It has deeper roots tied to past eras and forwards who arrived as solutions but ended up reinforcing the idea that nothing at this position comes easy for West Ham. It is impossible to ignore how the supporters have already lived through stories that began with excitement but ended with disappointment. And this pattern has repeated across different periods. Whenever a striker fails to spark, supporters instinctively revisit past examples to justify their skepticism. This collective memory influences not just the judgment of new signings, but also the emotional reaction every time a new name emerges as a potential solution. It is as if every incoming forward must carry a piece of the club's accumulated frustration, making comparisons immediate and unavoidable. This emotional backdrop explains why a figure like Ivan Toney naturally triggers a different kind of reaction. The appeal is not limited to technical ability or recent numbers, it is also about the sense of security he conveys. West Ham have experienced phases in which a strong, confident, decisive center forward transformed the entire atmosphere of the team. That memory remains vivid because supporters understand that a reliable striker lifts not only the squad's performance, but the club's overall mood and ambition. At the same time, the interest in someone like Mainu taps into a different emotional thread. West Ham have always had a soft spot for rising young talents, players capable of growing within the club's environment and injecting new energy into the squad. Although Mainu is not a product of the club's academy, his age and style evoke a nostalgic desire to rebuild through youth, echoing a time when West Ham were known for nurturing emerging players and shaping their future careers. This is why the contractual uncertainty surrounding Mainu becomes something greater than a simple market opportunity. It awakens the desire for renewal within the squad, the urge to reintroduce fresh dynamics into a group that has undergone notable changes in recent seasons. For supporters, the idea of bringing in someone with long-term potential resonates with the identity they believe the club should maintain, and this is where the emotional intensity rises. Supporters know they are entering another transfer window, and nothing unsettles the collective mood more than the approach of January. Expectations naturally resurface, but this time they are amplified by the sense that decisive moves must be made. Fans understand that choices made now could influence not just the remainder of the season, but the club's medium-term direction. A precise move can spark momentum, a wrong one can prolong instability. In this blend of tension and hope, the idea of a turning point begins to emerge. Whenever journalists like ORNSTEIN add new layers to the story, supporters immediately start imagining what could be unfolding behind the scenes. Even without concrete developments, the mere presence of active conversations fuels the imagination. Fans begin to evaluate what each potential signing could bring, how the squad might shift, and which areas could finally regain clarity and rhythm. All these elements contribute to a growing, quiet expectation. The possibility of adjusting the attack, refreshing the midfield, and giving the squad a new pulse feeds a sense that the club may be close to choosing its direction for the coming months. Every name linked, every rumor resurfacing, feels like a signal of a future yet to be shaped. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. By the time we reach this third stage of the discussion, the situation becomes far larger than individual names, numerical output, or transfer maneuvers. The real question unfolding here is what West Ham want to become from this point forward. Because ultimately, this debate is not just about players who might arrive or the instability some of them face at their current clubs. What truly lies beneath is a search for a stronger identity, a more deliberate direction that allows supporters to feel that the club finally has a coherent line between ambition, planning, and execution. This becomes even clearer when you consider the inconsistent rhythm the club has experienced in recent seasons. West Ham often walk a tightrope, constantly drifting between promise and vulnerability. It creates a recurring sensation that the team is always one decisive step away from either progressing or regressing. This volatility reinforces the idea that a defining moment is needed, something that turns the club's aspirations into tangible, sustained progress. And, for better or worse, transfer windows have become emotional pressure points, moments where supporters cling to the hope that January will correct the course. Within this landscape, players like Xerxes and Mainu become symbols rather than mere transfer targets. Xerxes represents that familiar dilemma, whether to invest in a player still forming his identity or to chase a more established name. Choosing him would signal a calculated gamble, the kind of decision rooted not only in potential, but in belief that West Ham could be the environment where he finally grows into the player long predicted. It is risky, but there is something undeniably compelling about being the club that transforms someone's trajectory. Mainu, meanwhile, brings an entirely different dimension. He represents renewal, long-term thinking, intelligence on the pitch, and the emotional appeal of building something rather than patching holes. West Ham supporters have always had a particular fondness for rising talents who can develop within the club's culture. Even though Mainu is not a homegrown product, the idea of bringing in a young midfielder ready to evolve speaks directly to a nostalgic desire to recapture a defining trait of the club's past identity. And what makes all this even more meaningful is the timing. The club finds itself navigating internal adjustments, trying to balance short-term competitiveness with the need to construct a sustainable future. Supporters sense that simply reacting to whatever the market offers is no longer enough. There is a growing expectation for the club to act with conviction, to choose players who fit a broader idea rather than simply filling gaps. This is the type of moment that demands alignment between ambition and action. This search for a clearer path also touches on something more sentimental but equally important: belonging. West Ham supporters have a distinctive relationship with their club. Even during turbulent periods, there is a deep-rooted bond tied to identity, location, and shared memory. That is why any potential signing becomes more than a technical decision. It becomes a statement about direction, intention, and how the club sees itself. A striker can spark hope or doubt. A midfielder can symbolize evolution or stagnation. Few fan bases experience transfer stories with as much emotional investment. At the same time, this reflection forces the club to confront its place within a Premier League that evolves ever more rapidly. Mid-table teams are investing heavily, strategies shift with speed, and projects collapse and restart within months. Surviving and progressing within this ecosystem requires courage, not recklessness, but determination to pursue players who reinforce a long-term identity. And that means choosing individuals whose arrival speaks to where the club wants to go, rather than where it feels compelled to be. All of this loops back to the symbolic weight of the two players at the center of this story. They reflect different potential futures, different versions of a West Ham that could emerge from the next transfer window. None of this guarantees success, and nothing promises immediate transformation. But the choice itself, between risk and security, between potential and consolidation, reveals the club's intentions more clearly than any public statement. And perhaps this is what supporters crave most: clarity, purpose, and the sense that the club is building something rather than drifting. This final section is not about predicting what will happen in January, it is about recognizing what is truly at stake. These discussions reflect a moment in which the club stands before a mirror, deciding how it wishes to define its next chapter. Transfer rumors rise and fall, players come and go, windows open and close. But the need to choose a direction remains. And maybe the interest in Xerxes and Mainu is simply a symptom of a deeper shift, something tied to identity, ambition, and reconstruction. Whatever the outcome, what matters most is that West Ham sees the opportunity to align their decisions with the future they aim to create. Moments like this, where potential pathways converge and choices shape identity, do not appear often. And when they do, they reveal what a club truly intends to become. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.